Hello, welcome, Professor Federica Russo again. Please let me introduce you first. And Professor Federica Russo holds the Westerdijk chair at the Freudenthal Institute, Utrecht University, and she is honorary professor at University College London. Thank you very much again, Professor Federica Russo, for accepting our invitation as keynote speaker. We want to welcome you to the opening ceremony of the second International Symposium on Communication, Digitalization and Society, organized by İstanbul Aydın University, Faculty of Communication and TÜBİTAK. Now we will listen to you with the topic of synthetic social agents, Poiêsis as meaning making. Please welcome, Professor.
Okay, perfect. So, thank you very much for the kind invitation and also for the presentation. I had a look at the program. It is really stunning, and I'm sure you will have a fantastic time and very useful discussion in these days. I am deeply honored to be invited to present work at this excellent meeting. I will be presenting work that stems from the European project I am currently coordinating. The project is Solaris, and specifically this is joint work with my colleagues Pier Cosma Visconti and Andrew McIntyre. As it turns out, I made a very slight change to my title, talking about socio-technical systems in more specific way for reasons that will become hopefully clear during the presentation. So let me get started with some motivation to get into this topic, and that clearly connects to the main theme of your symposium. Disinformation is not a new phenomenon. We can say that the attempt to disinform or to spread fakes is not something that only comes up today, but clearly digital technologies have transformed the way in which information...
Professor.
Yes.
Just a second, please. Could you turn down your voice a little bit, please?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Is it better? Because I don't get a sense of how loud it is on your side. Is this better now?
Just a little bit more, please.
Yeah. Okay. So I was saying disinformation is not this new phenomenon, but clearly digital technologies have transformed profoundly the way in which false and misleading information spread. Not only digital technologies, but we also need to consider the way in which social media have facilitated and greatly amplified phenomena, for instance, such as micro-targeting, and this has been analyzed in great detail from the perspective of media and of politics as well. It is not just a matter of amplifying phenomenon, it is also a matter of changing ontologically the environment, and digital technologies have creating this on-life dimension, if I can borrow a term from the philosophy of information, and that means that we are not either fully online or fully offline, but we are always in this liminal space that comprises both of them. Now, this is not per se what is creating the question of disinformation, but it helps explain why sometimes we have difficulties in understanding how to tackle disinformation in the light of these new technologies. Now, this has been going on for a while now, but generative AI is perhaps changing the landscape again. And this is why the title of these slides point to a disinformation 3.0, perhaps. So let me now spend a few words about the way in which generative AI is creating a new important change, or even a divide, I would say, in the field of communication. the concept I would like to introduce is the idea of interacting through versus interacting with. Okay. Here, what we have to consider is the way in which human agents and artifacts relate to the world, and how such interactions change depending on the type of technology. I'm not going to rehearse a full history of technology here, or not even a recent history of digital technologies. I just want to point to an important qualitative difference that artificial intelligence is introducing. So, when we interact through technology, we have mainly at work an idea of instrumentality, mediation, and message delivery. Now, this is a case in which, for instance, the English language does not help, because we still say that we write with the pen, but in fact, what we do is through the pen to being able to carry out some actions and eventually to write. Seemingly, even if I can share my ideas and post with social media, the interaction is not really with the social medium per se, but it is through a platform such as X, Facebook, or the one that you like best, that I try to deliver messages across. Now, clearly, it doesn't mean that this interaction only goes one direction, because we are also deeply affected by social media at the individual as well as group or population level. But, and this is where the important qualitative difference with generative AI comes, I'm not truly interacting with this type of medium, although we have to start a kind of making some nuances. But let me explain first the idea of interacting with. With interacting with a technology, there is more an idea of cooperation. Also, there is this idea that the easiness of communication makes digital artifacts as quasi others that we genuinely interact with, and so we interact as if an AI was a human agent. What has happened is that AI is moved to the foreground of sociality. Sorry for the typo in the slide, of sociality, which means that it is not just an instrument through which we communicate, but we really communicate with the chatbot, for instance. We communicate with ChatGPT for the purpose of co-producing text, and so on and so forth. So here we are witnessing an important difference that we need to understand in more detail than we have done so far. And this is where the idea of a socio-technical system that is synthetic comes in. Let me explain this idea to you. A socio-technical system is a concept that has been around for a couple of decades already, and it has been introduced to recognize the reciprocal relation that technology and society stand with each other. It is very important because it has helped us realize how much systems are not just social in the sense of made of human, but also socio-technical, because part of these systems we have instruments, equipments, anything that relates also to our daily life, and that relates to artifacts, and not just to humans and humans relation proper. But as we just saw with the idea of interacting through, the fact that we use these instruments and we have these technologies hand, it doesn't mean that these technologies were a proper part of our social relations. And this is exactly what is changing with the newest generation of technologies, and especially those that are based on AI. They qualify as social actors. They take more social roles, and they also change social practices. I deliberately say change and not just augment, because they are reshaping the way in which we are interacting with these instruments, and perhaps even the way we interact with each other at the human level using this technology. It is for this reason that in this project and with my colleagues, we have tried to capture this idea by dubbing these socio-technical systems as synthetic. Synthetic because they incorporate both human and artificial social agents, and they both have a role. One consequence is that the border between human and artificial behavior or communication is blurred, and their functioning is different with respect to, let's say, the previous generation of socio-technical systems. So, let me try to go some more detailed about what such a synthetic socio-technical system may look like, taking as an example the production and spreading of deepfakes, which is the main object of the current European project that I'm coordinating. So, what you see there is a simplified schematic and mostly visual picture of what a network of AI-generated content may look like. I am not using here the term deepfakes because deepfake also have a pretty negative connotation, and in the project we are also exploring cases of good AI-generated content. Also, clearly what you see is the image of a deep fake that has circulated widely, and it was quite funny to watch a fake Tom Cruise dancing in a not natural way. But clearly, if you substitute this funny deepfake with any deepfake that has instead a lot of sensitive content related to geopolitical situations, democratic processes such as elections, then you clearly see that the stakes are very high. So what you can see here in this network is that there are a number of different actors. These actors are not just different because they are numerous, they're also different in type. I hope you can see my mouse here, but you can have the level of generative AI development, which is different from the distribution when the deepfake content is created. This is related to a target, to the way it circulates online. All above here, there are policy and legislative intervention attempts to do something with this phenomena. Then we have users and also a public discourse. A network like this is largely inspired by a Latourian approach of actor network theory. And initially, we drew this map to show that it is wrong to only focus the attention to the content that is created, the deepfake, but to understand how a deepfake functions, but also how it spreads. It can become viral. You have to consider a broader network of actors and not only the output of an algorithm generating an image or a video or some other type of content. Let me now focus on a slightly different aspect, namely the interactions here. Now, You can, of course, focus on who the actors are, but you can also focus on how the interactions take place. And what becomes very interesting to notice is that at the level of the generation, online circulation, and also at the level of public discourse, we are observing a new level of interaction, or the idea that these instruments are not just mediators, they genuinely generate or make meaning. And this is the idea that I want to introduce next, namely this idea of meaning making that in the beginning was a prerogative of humans, then it has also got to artificial agents, and now it is becoming also synthetic because it is part of a cooperation or co-production between human and artificial agents. So let me spell out a bit this idea that we encapsulate through the concept of poiesis. And this is an idea that I have developed at length in my latest monograph titled Techno-Scientific Practices and Informational Approach. The very basic idea of poiesis is that human and artificial epistemic agents produce knowledge. I am using here the term epistemic agent because originally I developed the argument in the context of techno-scientific practices, and so in the context of science and technology, with the question of how do we produce knowledge nowadays that we have so many instruments that take part into this process and not just human. So there is part of this idea that is distinctively epistemic, namely knowledge production is not or not anymore a prerogative of only us humans, and in certain circles in philosophy of science we still have the tendency of seeing knowledge as some kind of distinct human product in abstraction of social environment, technological equipment, and everything else. But also, what is important to notice is that technologies, environment, materiality, embodiment, situatedness, all these are essential elements. And it is only when you have this broader perspective of understanding on how we produce knowledge that you can appreciate the ways in which in a scientific context, technologies are not just instruments, but are proper agents that we interact with the purpose of producing knowledge. Clearly, there are shades of gray here, and the use of algorithms in, for instance, neuroscience is an example where we properly interact with, and they have much more autonomy in also producing content, and it is much less if you are only using your pen and pencil to make a drawing on your blank sheet. So you shouldn't take this as rigid categories, but as a spectrum that helps you understand how this idea of knowledge co-production takes place in different ways. What I think it is also important to note is that this concept of poiesis also have very important normative implications for the design, for the regulation and governance, but also it should push us to rethink responsibility in the light of this idea of co-production, because one could be tempted to say, if machines have so much autonomy into the production of knowledge, then the responsibility is off the shoulders of us humans. And I instead would like to make an argument to the opposite effect, to say that we have even more responsibility. But I will not develop further this idea. I wanted to introduce to you the concept of poiesis as I developed it in the context context of philosophy of science and technology. And now I would like to tailor this more to the context of disinformation and deep fakes. Now, we have to realize that there are a number of different modes of co-production, and clearly the use of large language models has become so widespread and so quickly. But we need to understand as well that there are various types of co-production. This may concern text, but also speech, so reproducing really voice, images, and videos. This is the what part. The how part of the co-production is encapsulated, as I said, in the concept of poiesis that I presented earlier. What is important for our purposes related to disinformation is to build on arguments that have already been made. So it has been correctly pointed out that large language models do not understand, but they are like statistical parrots because they repeat in different ways what is in the training data used for them. Still, what is important to recognize is that even if they are parrots, they still generate content, and in a genuine way. And so through this generation, large language models do contribute to meaning making by building, establishing, and also spreading certain narratives. This is problematic, or at least should call for thinking about the challenges ahead, and I will mention some of them. One, it seems to me, it clearly related to digital literacy. We need to ask what plans are in place to equip citizens with basic literacy concerning the presence and potential use of large language models, and also about other generative AI tools. This is for everyday purpose, for scientific purpose, and also for educational purpose. I feel particularly strong about the idea that we should empower digital literacy, citizenship, and education, fostering values such as self-awareness, trying to ask who we are in the infosphere and what is in our network, exercising caution, for instance, trying to ask whether we have enough ground to believe in social media content that is spread, but also on the other flip side of the coin, also to be proactive. And so we should ask ourselves how we can make our close environment safer. And this, of course, is related to caution. And finally, we should develop better argumentation skills. Do we have enough expertise and skills to judge the quality and the source of information? While it is very important that citizens feel the responsibility on the one hand, but they're also empowered in facing the new challenges of disinformation, it is important to think that there are also regulatory efforts that are equally important. The EU is leading in how to deal with this. Leading, I mean that it is taking proactive steps in coming up with a regulation, and the latest example is the Artificial Intelligence Act, which is part of a larger package of regulatory legislation concerning technologies and digital technologies specifically. But we should ask whether this idea of human-centered and trustworthy AI is on the right track, and how this is in the context of international relations, and what other countries are in other places. I have specifically in mind China and the US as a main contender that take a slightly different approach to the regulation of artificial intelligence. there is also something to be said about journalism and media responsibilities in the era of AI. I have been wondering whether we should develop a new ethos. Perhaps it's not so new in the sense that while visuals have a lot of power and value, as we have seen, we should perhaps also go back to the idea of the power of arguments, and so give more importance to written text. Now, let me return for a moment to the network that I showed earlier. Earlier on, I focused on interactions and how the type of interaction changed. Now, let me emphasize instead the nodes. Having an idea of what kind of actors are in place, and the fact that this socio-technical system is synthetic and so it blends as well human and artificial actors, can help us identify multiple entry points to tackle this information. That's why I mentioned several types of challenges ahead. I really want to think that it is through the identification of these different nodes and also their nature that we can come up with better policies, whether they are at the level of education, at the level of legislation, or at the level of, for instance, media and journalism. I thank you very much for your attention. I thank you for the opportunity to present the work generated by my colleagues in the context of the Solaris project funded by the EU. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your speech and for your participation and contribution, Professor Russo. And we also hope to welcome you in Istanbul very soon sometimes.
It will be my pleasure.